You'll never be more than a ghost sweeping the edges of this city. The words echoed inside her head like poisoned arrows, each syllable spat from the smug lips of Mr. Dalton, the building manager of Manhattan's tallest corporate tower. He had said it in front of dozens of white-collar employees, his expensive suit gleaming under fluorescent lights, his Rolex catching the sun, as he pointed at her like she was trash. And in that moment, every pair of eyes turned on her with the same mix of pity, disdain, and relief that it wasn't them being humiliated. Her name was Maya. To the world, she was nothing more than a single mother with a mop and a pair of worn-out sneakers, pushing her cart of cleaning supplies through cold marble floors and endless glass corridors. She was invisible in a city that worshipped money, status, and speed. Invisible until someone decided to laugh at her, to remind her she didn't belong. But what no one knew, what Maya had buried under years of exhaustion and silence, was that she carried a past sharper than broken glass, a hidden brilliance forged in places far darker than any corporate basement. The day began like any other. The skyscraper pulsed with life. Phones ringing, shoes clicking, executives rushing past her like currents in a storm. Maya moved unnoticed, scrubbing away the smudges and coffee spills they left behind, until the mistake happened. An expensive vase, imported from Italy, worth more than 3 years of her rent, lay shattered across the marble floor of the 47th level lobby. Dalton's face twisted in fury, his voice booming, "You useless woman! Do you even know what that cost? Get out of my sight before I have security drag you away." Maya froze, mop still in hand. She hadn't touched it. The vase had been knocked over by one of the executives rushing for a meeting, but none of them would admit it. None of them would defend her. The laughter that followed burned hotter than fire. Her neighbors at the staff quarters had whispered behind her back for years, calling her the charity case, the abandoned one, the woman left behind. And here it was again, her life, defined by shame that wasn't hers to carry. But fate has a cruel, poetic way of turning humiliation into destiny. Because only moments later, the building itself screamed. An alarm blared, shrill and merciless. The walls trembled. Elevators froze mid-descent. On the 50th floor, smoke began seeping through the ventilation system, curling like black snakes into every corridor. A voice crackled through the loudspeakers. Hijackers had seized the tower, armed and ruthless, demanding access to sensitive data stored in the company's mainframe. Panic erupted. Executives scattered like frightened animals, clawing for exits that no longer worked. Security was overpowered. The police outside were helpless, locked out by reinforced glass and steel. And in the chaos, all eyes turned, once again, to the woman they had mocked only minutes ago. Maya stood still. The mop clattered to the ground. And for the first time in years, her spine straightened, her eyes sharpened, and her silence shattered. "Everyone, get down and stay quiet," she commanded, her voice steady, precise, like a soldier giving orders. The room froze, because suddenly, Maya was not the janitor they had dismissed. She was something else entirely, something they never saw coming. The shriek of alarms mingled with the terrified gasps of executives scrambling for cover. Smoke thickened, curling down the glass walls, smothering the sterile scent of wealth with the acrid bite of fear. For the first time, the tower, the symbol of New York's arrogance and success, felt less like a monument and more like a trap. 3 men emerged from the stairwell, their faces hidden behind black masks, their rifles gleaming with military precision. One barked orders in a foreign tongue. The other smashed a laptop against the floor to show they weren't bluffing. The leader, tall, cold, deliberate, held a tablet in his gloved hand. Corporate vault access. 40 minutes. Or bodies drop. The employees cowered. Dalton, the arrogant building manager who had humiliated Maya minutes earlier, was now pale as paper, his bravado stripped away. He was shaking so badly his Rolex clinked against the floor tiles as he raised trembling hands. Maya stood still, her mop abandoned, her breathing calm. But deep inside her chest, something long buried began to stir. She had seen this before. Years ago, before she became the forgotten woman scrubbing floors. Maya had lived another life. One shrouded in secrecy, swallowed by files marked classified. She had been part of a shadow unit trained for high-risk extractions, infiltration, and combat scenarios most civilians couldn't even imagine. She had been brilliant at it, too brilliant. But after a betrayal and the birth of her child, she vanished into the anonymity of city life, trading weapons for a mop handle. But tonight, anonymity was no longer an option. The hijackers began corralling employees like cattle, forcing them to sit on the ground, rifles aimed at their heads. Dalton whimpered. The others sobbed. One woman clutched her phone, whispering desperate prayers before a boot smashed it to pieces. Maya's instincts surged. Every angle of the room sharpened in her mind. The distance between her and the nearest attacker, 12 feet. The blind spot behind the marble reception desk. The sprinkler system overhead, linked to the emergency generators. The heavy metal cart she had wheeled moments ago, loaded with cleaning supplies, but also carrying enough industrial chemicals to blind, burn, or choke if used correctly. Her heart beat steady, like the ticking of a metronome. But then a sound cut through the chaos. A scream. The hijackers dragged a young intern forward, a trembling boy no older than 19, and shoved the barrel of a rifle against his temple. Access code. Now. The boy cried that he didn't have it. The leader raised his weapon. Time slowed. Maya moved before thought could catch her. In a single fluid motion, she grabbed the spray bottle of ammonia from her cart, aimed, and fired a mist straight into the gunman's eyes. He screamed, stumbling back as the rifle clattered to the ground. Gasps rippled through the hostages. Before the other two men could react, Maya was already moving, rolling across the marble floor, scooping up the dropped rifle with a precision no janitor should possess. Her hands fit the weapon like they were born to hold it. In one sharp pivot, she kicked the reception desk panel, cutting off the attacker's sight line, and barked, "Stay down if you want to live." The entire lobby obeyed instantly. Dalton's jaw dropped. The same woman he had mocked like dirt now stood with the posture of a warrior, eyes burning, hands steady. The leader snarled, regrouping with his men. "She's trained. Take her alive." Maya exhaled slowly, centering herself. She knew she couldn't win this with brute force alone. There were too many, too well-armed, and too ruthless. But she didn't need brute force. She had strategy, timing, and a genius for survival honed in the shadows. The war inside the tower had begun. And for the first time in years, Maya was not just surviving. She was taking control. The skyscraper's polished glass no longer gleamed. It felt like a cage. Outside, flashing red and blue sirens bounced against the night sky, a chorus of helicopters circling helplessly, their spotlights slicing across steel walls that refused to give. Inside, smoke swirled, sprinklers dripped, and fear clung to every breath. The hijackers regrouped. Their leader, cold and calculating, barked into his radio, "Level 50 secure. Begin the upload." Somewhere above, servers hummed as stolen data flowed into their system. But down here in the 47th floor lobby, the balance of power had already shifted. Because Maya, once invisible, once mocked, now stood tall, rifle steady, her silhouette backlit by the dim emergency lights. The hostages clung to her presence like a lifeline. Even Dalton, sweat dripping down his perfect hair, crawled closer as though proximity to her could erase the shame of his earlier cruelty. Maya scanned the room, her mind running through probabilities like lightning. 2 hostiles in the lobby still armed, positioned near the stairwell exit. 1 disarmed but recovering, blinded by ammonia. At least 3 more upstairs, probably guarding the mainframe room. Time to detonation or execution. Unknown, but soon. She could feel their eyes on her, waiting, judging, hoping. But Maya didn't act on hope. She acted on precision. She crouched beside her cart, hands moving fast, silent, deliberate. A bottle of bleach, another of vinegar, a roll of duct tape she always carried. She snapped off the nozzle of a spray bottle, replaced it with a rag, and twisted the cap tight. Improvised weapon done. Dalton's voice cracked, low and desperate. You can't possibly think you can take them all. You're just... Maya turned on him, her gaze sharp enough to cut steel. Finish that sentence, Dalton, and you'll learn just how wrong you've been. He shut up instantly. The hijackers opened fire. Bullets sprayed across marble, shattering glass, ricocheting sparks from the reception desk. Hostages screamed, ducking for cover. But Maya didn't flinch. She counted shots, reading the rhythm, the split-second gaps when magazines emptied. And in that heartbeat of silence, she moved. Rolling low across the wet marble, she lobbed her improvised device toward the stairwell. The bottle hit the floor with a sharp clink, releasing a choking cloud of fumes. The attackers coughed violently, eyes stinging, vision blurred. Maya surged forward, disarming the first with a strike so precise it dropped him instantly. The second swung his rifle, but she was faster. Her boot slammed into his knee, twisting him down, weapon clattering away. In a flash, she had both rifles under her control. The lobby went silent, save for the ragged coughing of the blinded hijackers. Gasps erupted among the hostages. For the first time, they weren't just terrified. They were in awe. Maya raised a finger to her lips. Quiet. This isn't over. She knew this was only the opening act. The real threat was upstairs. And the leader, who hadn't flinched even as his men fell, watched her with a glint of recognition. "I know you," he said softly, his accent heavy, his words laced with menace. "Shadow Unit, Operation Black Tide. You're supposed to be dead." The revelation struck like a thunderclap. The hostages glanced at her, wide-eyed. A janitor? No. A single mother? No. Maya was something else. Someone forged in secrets the world was never meant to know. Her jaw tightened. Dead is what I wanted them to think. The leader smiled coldly, as though fate had just dealt him an unexpected challenge. He lifted his radio. "Upstairs. Double security. We have a ghost in the tower." And just like that, the battlefield shifted. Maya was no longer fighting for survival. She was fighting against her past, against the very forces she had tried to escape. She turned back to the hostages. Her voice was steel. "Stay here. Stay low. And if you want to walk out alive, do exactly as I say." Every eye, once filled with disdain, now followed her with reverence. Maya slung the rifle across her back, grabbed her cart like it was an arsenal, and headed for the stairwell. Each step echoed not as a janitor's shuffle, but as a soldier's march toward destiny. The forgotten outcast had become the only hope in the tower, and the city was about to witness a brilliance no one had ever seen coming. The stairwell smelled of smoke and steel. The hum of servers upstairs vibrated through the concrete, a reminder that the hijackers were minutes away from extracting data powerful enough to cripple the city's financial core. Maya's boots hit each step with controlled precision. Every nerve in her body was alive again, not with fear, but with the sharp, cold clarity of someone who had walked through battlefields and lived to tell the story. She reached the 50th floor. The door was reinforced, 2 armed guards stationed outside. Their rifles pointed toward the stairwell as the leader's orders buzzed in their earpieces. Maya crouched, her hands working with tools no one would ever expect a janitor to carry, but every operative would. A small screwdriver hidden in her cart's handle, duct tape folded flat into her back pocket, a shard of mirror scavenged from the shattered lobby. Improvisation was her genius. Improvisation was survival. Sliding the mirror under the doorframe, she mapped their positions. One leaned left, relaxed but alert. The other stood tall, weapon raised. She acted. A flash of bleach from a spray bottle. A kick that slammed the door wide. The guard on the left went down choking. The one on the right barely had time to shout before Maya pivoted, rifle raised, and silenced him with a single, precise strike. She dragged both bodies aside, stripped their weapons, and stepped into the server floor. The scene was chaos. Racks of glowing machines hummed like a heartbeat, wires snaking across the floor. At the center, the hijacker leader stood with his mask pulled back, a laptop connected to the mainframe. His eyes locked onto hers, calm, calculating, like a chess master who had been expecting this moment all along. Around him, 3 more men raised their rifles. Maya didn't flinch. "Shut it down," she ordered, her voice sharp, commanding. The leader smirked. "You think you can stop this? You, a ghost with nothing left? I studied your file, Maya. I know your every move." Her eyes burned. "Then you should know I don't play by the file." Gunfire erupted. Sparks flew as bullets tore through servers, glass shattering, alarms shrieking louder. Maya dove behind a rack, rolled and returned fire. Precise, controlled, each shot a message. 2 men went down instantly. But the leader was different. He moved with the same lethal training she once had, his every motion a mirror of her own past. They weren't just fighting for control of the tower, they were fighting to prove which ghost could rewrite the rules of destiny. They clashed in the center of the server room. Rifle against rifle, then steel against steel as knives flashed in the dim light. Sparks lit the room as their blades collided. He slashed. She ducked. He lunged. She countered, twisting his arm, sending his weapon skidding across the floor. "You could have been legendary," he hissed, pressing her back against the server rack. "Instead, you're scrubbing toilets." Maya's breath was steady, her eyes locked onto his. "And yet here you are, losing to the janitor." With a surge of strength, she drove her elbow into his chest, spun, and slammed him hard against the server. The impact jolted the system, sparks raining down. His knife slipped, her fist connected, and with a final, decisive strike, she sent him crashing to the floor, unconscious, defeated. The laptop beside him blinked. Data upload at 97%. Maya grabbed it, yanked the cable free, and hurled the device into the smoking wreckage of a server rack. The screen died instantly. The city's secrets were safe. Silence fell. Maya stood in the ruins of the server room, chest rising and falling, smoke curling around her silhouette. She was bloodied, bruised, but unbroken. The hostages below would live. The city would live. And the woman they had all mocked, dismissed, ignored, was now the only reason they had a future. As the SWAT team finally breached the lower floors, storming upward too late to save anyone, but just in time to witness the aftermath, they found Maya standing tall amidst the wreckage. Dalton was the first to crawl up, his voice trembling. She saved us. She saved everyone." The officers trained their weapons on her for a heartbeat, then lowered them, realizing what had just happened. In that moment, the city that had forgotten her finally saw her for who she truly was. Not a ghost, not an outcast, but a force unstoppable. Maya didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply walked past them all, down the stairwell, back toward her cart, the janitor's cart that had become her arsenal, and whispered under her breath, "I was never nothing. You just weren't looking." The tower doors burst open. Floodlights pierced the night as SWAT teams escorted trembling employees into the street. Medics rushed forward, wrapping blankets around pale shoulders, pressing oxygen masks against sobbing faces. Reporters shoved microphones into the chaos, their voices desperate to capture the story breaking like wildfire across New York. But among the crowd, one figure moved differently. Maya. Her clothes were torn, streaked with soot and blood. Her hair clung to her face in damp strands. And yet, she walked with the composure of someone who had carried the weight of life and death in her hands, and won. Dalton stumbled out behind her, clutching his arm in a sling, his arrogance long gone. Cameras swarmed him first. What happened in there? Who saved you? For once, Dalton didn't embellish. He didn't lie. His voice cracked with shame and awe as he pointed at Maya. Her. She saved us all. I was wrong about her. The crowd turned. Flashbulbs erupted. Gasps filled the air. The janitor they had all overlooked. The struggling single mother, abandoned, ignored, mocked, now stood revealed as the reason the city still breathed. Maya didn't pose for the cameras. She didn't bask in the attention. She simply bent down, picked up her daughter, who had been waiting with a neighbor across the barricades, and held her close. The little girl's eyes widened. "Mom, everyone's talking about you." Maya kissed her forehead, whispering, "Let them talk. We've got our own life to live." The city would never forget what happened inside that tower. Her name would echo in headlines, in boardrooms, in hushed whispers that carried both guilt and reverence. But Maya didn't care for their applause. What mattered was her child in her arms, safe. As dawn broke, painting the skyscrapers in gold, the once invisible woman walked away, not as a janitor, not as an outcast, but as proof that true power is never in titles or wealth. It's in courage, in brilliance, in the quiet strength of those who rise when no one expects them to. And Maya had risen higher than them all. And that, my friends, is the story of Maya, the woman the world dismissed, who rewrote her destiny in the most extraordinary way. If the story moved you, if it reminded you that greatness can come from the most unexpected places, then I want to thank you for staying with me to the very end. Stories like this are more than entertainment. They're reminders of what lies hidden within each of us. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs inspiration today, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another story that will make you see the world differently. Thank you for watching, thank you for believing, and I'll see you in the next story.